Tuesday afternoon to you. I hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com will be along a little later to talk Browns, and that's where we will begin talking Browns with Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan, also Browns Radio Network halftime and post-game host. Jeff, you look at what the Browns did against the Bears and particularly their defense. It was outstanding. Highest graded rookies so far this season, according to Pro Football Focus, the analytics folks. Number 1, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Number 2, Cowboys edge rusher Micah Parsons. 3, Odafe Oweh from the Ravens. Nate Hobbs from the Raiders, and Jamar Chase, wide receiver from the Bengals. Top 5. But number 1, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah.
And that's with everybody in Cleveland screaming, "We want more," Dave. I think everybody wants to see him do more. He looked pretty good against the Bears. So hopefully that's the beginning of some pretty good stuff. We saw so many guys, it seemed like, turned loose against the Chicago Bears. I don't know if that was more about the Browns and Joe Woods and the scheme, or if that was about the Bears being kind of overwhelmed up front. Whatever it was, it didn't work well for Chicago. But I thought JOK looked good, especially early on when he was in on that sack with Myles Garrett. And I want to see more. He's supposed to be a playmaker on defense. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, the Browns have been hesitant maybe to, you keep hearing Joe Woods saying that they don't want to throw too much at him at once so that he, becomes kind of the jack of all trades and the master of none. But, man, 28 was all over the field. I mean, it was, there were times where it was like, oh, he's over here, now he's over here.
Yeah. And he has that ability, and if you were worried about him maybe being an undersized linebacker, wearing number 28 doesn't help at all, because every time I see him, Dave, in a 28, I'm thinking safety or even corner, but it's a strange look. I'm still getting used to that. But I like his aggressiveness. I like the fact that he can do a lot of things, and I'm anxious to see more. There's not a whole lot I think you can say about him other than let's see more, because I think JOK and Clowney are the two guys who can make a big, big difference in this defense. John Johnson III, no question, he can handle things in the back. Greg Newsome helping at corner, starting at one spot. We hope moving forward. But I think JOK and Clowney can be real difference makers and the guys who kind of elevate this defense a little bit.
Yeah, they give you an element that was missing for a while with the Browns. All right, so let's listen what Troy Hill, veteran, has to say, what he's noticed about the rookie Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah.
For some reason, he always around the ball. That's what I see. He always around the ball, always making big plays, and he got high energy out there. I mean, that's another rookie that I'm excited to keep on watching because, he, like I say, he played with a lot of energy. He loved the game. You see the passion that he got out there, and he's a ball magnet, always around that ball like that. So, he's going to be a special one, too.
Jeff, the other thing that I noticed a couple of times, you're concerned with an undersized linebacker not being able to play off blocks. There were a couple running plays where he shed blockers and got to the ball. And that's something that I've been paying attention to with Owusu-Koramoah.
For good reason. The linebacking core on this team, Dave, is the one thing, and I think I won't call it a gray area. It's the one part of the defense that I think screams, okay, who's going to step up and make a difference there? Anthony Walker's out, Malcolm Smith doing a real nice job in the middle there. You have two veterans, and you know what they're going to do. And the defense seems to be designed, for a veteran in the middle to kind of run the show, make tackles, help clog up the run. But you're looking for dynamic play off of those guys on the outside. And that's where JOK comes into this thing. And if he can continue to build on what he did against Chicago, he's on his way, because that's the type of stuff I think that everybody's looking for from him. Yeah,
and, let's give the guy more. He's handled what you've thrown at him. Give him more. Give him more until he can't handle it. All right. We've talked a little bit about Pro Football Focus, analytics-driven website. They come out with a team of the week every week. Browns all over this one as we take a look. Running back Kareem Hunt, right tackle Jack Conklin, edge rusher Myles Garrett, linebacker Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. PFF Defensive Player of the Week, Myles Garrett. And PFF Rookie of the Week, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. It's what you want.
They have a lot of staff, don't they? if they can look at everybody who played, yeah, Jack Conklin was the best right tackle this week. Really? You guys looked at all the right tackles, huh? That's really pretty impressive. I think what you just talked about, Dave, and what you laid out is something we can see on a regular basis. I mean, look at the talent that we have on this Browns team. It's, from an individual standpoint, it's outrageous. Now, you got to make it work as a team, but from an individual standpoint, without question, they have talent all over the field. And you can look at the defensive line. Okay, Myles Garrett, Player of the Week, great. Clowney's really good. The guys in the middle seem to be doing a pretty nice job too, the Maliks. Linebacker, again, that's where we're looking, but JOK came up this week and did a great job. You have John Johnson, the corners with Denzel and Greg and hopefully Greedy. On the offensive side of the ball, we all know that story. So I would expect the Browns to dominate a lot of these teams on weeks when they win.
Let's shift our focus a little bit. Running game. They ran for a lot of yardage against a defensive line, and the Bears' defense is pretty good. And the Browns' offense, that's probably a top-tier defense. I don't say it's top 2 or top 3, but I think certainly you would consider the Bears to be in the top 10. Top half or top 10 of the defenses in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And the Browns ran for 215 yards.
They put up tons of yardage, both on the ground and in the air. Offense was really good. And Dave, I liked the mix. Between Kareem's rushes and his receptions, I think he had 16 touches, and Nick Chubb had 22. If you can get the ball in their hands 38 times, you're going to win that game. I don't think there's any question that's a win for you. If those two guys, because otherwise you're having to throw, if you're behind or if it's a tight game or whatever. But if those guys can control the football and run the ball effectively and behind this line, usually that's the case, you're just going to win. And I love seeing that kind of play dispersal among those guys. And Baker throwing when he has to rather than when he needs, when he wants to rather than when he has to.
Well, the other thing is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah played really well in that game. A little bit overshadowed because Myles Garrett set a franchise record with 4.5 sacks. But the Pepsi Zero Rookie of the Year, or Rookie of the Week, rather, nominees for this week include Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah of the Browns. Also up for it are Najee Harris, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Azeez Oluwaseun, the edge rusher for the Giants, Asante Samuel, for the Chargers, the defensive back there. But JOK up for Pepsi Rookie of the Week. So go vote for him. That way we can talk about him being the Rookie of the Week. It's a self-serving thing. We want to be able to talk to him about being Rookie of the Week. But really, he'd had that type of performance. And again, it got overshadowed because they sacked the quarterback 9 times, and Myles Garrett had 4.5 of them.
It's interesting too, Dave, the way he's, especially this week, and some of the hype leading into the draft, folks thought he's a surefire first rounder. And when the Browns didn't take him at that spot in the first round and they took Greg Newsome instead, I think everybody kind of thought, wait a minute, what's going on? And then he kept dropping, and the Browns made the move to go get him. And it's weird how a guy can drop like that. And 3 games doesn't make a career, so we'll see where he goes. But the Browns, I think, were fortunate that nobody else jumped in there. They were able to jump in. They made that move. And maybe out of this draft, you end up with at least 2 real big-time pieces for your defense in Newsome and JOK.
Yeah, and you know what? You're going to need, if you're Andrew Berry, you're going to need to continue to do that because as you continue to get guys that are playing well and developing, I know the salary cap's going up. They have so much talent. The salary cap isn't going up quite enough to keep everybody you want. So you got to keep replenishing with the draft. And I agree. It looks like they may have gotten 3 pretty good ones with Demetric Felton as well. He looks like he can contribute as well. Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan, Browns Radio Network, on the halftime and post-game shows. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, some of the national guys on who the top team in the AFC are, plus Pete Prisco's power rankings. Where are the Browns in that one? Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions, lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
We continue talking Browns football with Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan and the Browns Radio Network. Jeff Saturday, former offensive lineman in the NFL, talking about who he thinks is the best team in the AFC through 3 games.
I'm going to go Browns. I was going to go with the Bills. I switched it. I'm not sure if my graphic made it in there. I'm going to go the Browns, though. I just think they're the most complete team. They got the roster for it. Their offensive line is good. Their defensive line, you just saw what they did. 9 sacks in one game. They're getting after people. I think they'll progressively get better as the season continues. And also, I had to go against Dan. I can't agree with that.
So, Jeff Phelps, what do you think? Browns 2-1. Chiefs now 1-2. 3 games. I get it, doesn't make a season. But a lot of what you thought the Browns would be is starting to show up.
That's true, Dave. I'm not ready to say that they're playing that well yet. You had 13 points against the Chicago team, through 3 quarters. You added 13 more in the fourth to win the game. That's great. You had a 14-14 game at halftime against Houston. And then Tyrod Taylor goes out and you win the game in the second half against a rookie quarterback. So their 2 wins have been quarterbacked 6 of the 8 quarters by rookie quarterbacks. To me, that doesn't scream best team in the NFL. To me, that screams, okay, we're on our way. And that's okay too. So I disagree with Jeff Saturday on that. I don't think they're the best team in the NFL right now. I think they have to beat better quality opponents. I don't think the Bears they were 8-8 last year. Texans are a mess. So I'm not ready to say that yet. Think about it. A game and a half against rookie quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm. That's something I didn't factor in. Very valid point.
Thank you.
Now, I will say, though, if you're talking the Bills are the best team in the AFC, they lost to a Steelers team that's not good. That's going
right
south down in Pittsburgh in a hurry. The teams that are unbeaten, Broncos, okay, but they haven't played a team that's won a game yet. That's a little bit of a concern.
Going.
Raiders, they're okay.
Oh,
you like
there
them,
you
huh? You like them, huh?
I like the Raiders.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a look.
Raiders.
We're going to take a look at Pete Prisco's power rankings. So you won't dislike this, I guess. So he goes Rams, Cardinals, Packers as the top 3.
Yeah.
Buccaneers 4. Yeah. So top 4 from the NFC. Bills are number 5. Raiders, your Raiders, are number 6. 49ers 7, Browns 8. So I'm guessing you think that's pretty fair and accurate?
I'm sorry, did he see Green Bay in week 1?
Yeah. That's a good question.
Look, when teams are going to lose in the NFL against teams they're not supposed to lose to. So I can't really disagree with Pete Prisco when he puts the Packers at what, Dave? 3? You had them at 3?
3, yeah.
I mean, they lost 31-3 in their opening game. And they're the 3rd best team in the league. Okay. I'm not going to argue with that. But to me, that just shows not much that's happened in the first 3 weeks has changed Pete's mind about rankings. So maybe they shouldn't, maybe it shouldn't. Maybe it shouldn't matter that the Browns have played a game and a half against rookie quarterbacks. And maybe it shouldn't matter that the Packers lost 31-3. I think, or was it 37? It was 30-something to 3.
It was
to
ugly.
A New Orleans team. Yeah, it was terrible. To a New Orleans team that didn't have a home.
Right.
They were out and about. So, and they played that game in Jacksonville. So, okay, I have a hard time arguing with what Prisco said, but San Francisco hasn't looked phenomenal. Right? They lost the other day.
Yep.
And they're still up there. So I think those are a little predetermined power rankings, and there's nothing wrong with that. As long as he says, hey, I'm not really taking into account what I've seen in the first 3 weeks completely.
Yeah, that's fair enough. All right, so CBS Sports,
Thanks.
This is from Cody Benjamin. He says, one thing we've learned about each team so far through 3 weeks. And he says, after 3 weeks, the Browns are the class of the AFC North. That can change, of course. But right now, they're balanced across the board, whereas the Ravens and Bengals are uneven, and the Steelers looked diminished. That sounds like a Bill Belichick thing. The Steelers looked diminished. Again, I guess it's fair. If you're saying now the Steelers or the Ravens rather are really beat up and have found a way to win some games and be competitive, and the Bengals I think are just young, and I think that offense could end up being really good.
I agree. I love the Bengals skill position players, and so much so that I've tried to make a fantasy trade in my fantasy league to get Jamar Chase from somebody. Yeah, you won't seem to trade him, will you, Dave?
No, I will not. You're not getting him, but that's okay. That's okay. My team was bad for a reason last year.
I do like their skill position talent in Cincinnati, and I think they're on their way, and they better be, or they're going to be looking for a new head coach. Dave, tell me what you think. I think the Steelers are a quarterback away from being the Steelers again. Because Ben Roethlisberger just doesn't, Ben's pushing 40. Just because Tom Brady can do it doesn't mean everybody else can.
Yeah.
And the elbow issue a year and a half ago or whatever it was, and he just doesn't look very good. And they have some really good weapons at wide receiver in Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster and Chase Claypool. And I don't know that Ben can make the throws to make them the best guys they can be. They seem to be running a shorter passing offense, and you've got 3 guys there, especially I think Claypool and Schuster, who can really burn a team deep, and I don't know that Ben can really make that happen anymore.
Yeah, and the defense you saw without T.J. Watt last week wasn't nearly as, intimidating as it is. He steps on the field and he makes a difference. He makes that defense. Yeah. He elevates everybody around him. So, and you know what? I don't think they have that quarterback on their roster. They got to go try to find one, being the Steelers.
Yeah, I don't think it's Mason Rudolph, but do you think Dwayne Haskins can become that kind of a guy?
Maybe.
I mean, what do you have? 50 touchdowns and 4 interceptions or something at Ohio State? He was nuts in college in a big time offense, and he went to Washington and did some things that didn't work out very well. I wonder if he can become that guy for the Steelers. And if he can resemble what Washington thought they were drafting and what he showed at Ohio State, I think he could be. Think about what he did at Ohio State, and I know it's college, but if he can play quarterback like that with the Steelers, all of a sudden those wide receivers become a really big deal for them.
Yeah,
big deal.
He's got to get there in a hurry, though, because
he sure does.
The NFL will pass him by in a hurry. But It was certainly, you don't get drafted in the first round in the NFL if you don't have the potential to do that. Now the question is, are you gonna get to your potential? All right, here's something we alluded to earlier, last segment. Browns ran the ball 42 times, ran it effectively against a Bears defense that was one of the best in the league through the first 2 years. Do you think should we expect to see more of that? Do you want to see more of that? Is it kind of battering ram, run the football mindset for the Browns?
If the Browns, Dave, think they have a defense that they can run on, I don't care if Baker Mayfield throws 15 passes in a game. I think this is becoming the type of team that can win. All right, what's the defense do poorly? Let's go get it. And, you have 3 tight ends. Do they not cover tight ends well? Okay, well, we're going to hammer you with Hooper and Bryant and Njoku. And you don't have good corners? Here come Odell and Jarvis, hopefully Jarvis and Odell together, and Donovan Peoples-Jones and whatever else you need to do there. And you don't stop the run. If a team doesn't stop the run, they're done against the Browns, I think, because Nick and Kareem will just destroy them, as we saw them run like crazy against Chicago. So if you can get a little bit of a lead and you don't think they can stop your running game, man, I'd love to see 40 carries between those two guys. That's very unlikely to happen this year. I'll bet it doesn't even happen twice. We'll see if it even happens once. But if those two guys can combine for 30 to 35 carries a game, Dave, you're going to win. I mean, you will win that game unless something screwy happens at the end. So I am all for them running the ball like crazy.
Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan, as well as the Browns Radio Network. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we've talked about the running game. One of the reasons it works, offensive line. We'll hear from Wyatt Teller and talk offensive line. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine and too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. Continue talking Browns football with Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan and the Browns Radio Network. So, Browns offensive line, the good was they ran for over 200 yards against Bears. It was pointed out by Wyatt Teller that they did give up 5 sacks on Baker Mayfield against the Browns. So Wyatt Teller talked a little bit about the Browns offensive line and just getting better and better.
I mean, if you know who our offensive line coach is, he doesn't let the smallest things go. It's perfectionist, and we weren't perfect. I mean, like you said, so we need to get back into the lab, right? Make sure that what the issues were that we were seeing, fix those. And if that's communication, if that's set in a certain way. I mean, again, that was a really good defensive line, and 215 yards of rushing was the plan. I mean, we had to get after them. We had to go and then, and pass when we had to get it. Those, we had I think 2 4th downs that ended in a sack, and you're like, what the heck? You're blocking the guy, and all of a sudden everybody's up here like, what's going on? What's going on? And Baker's jersey's dirty. Baker's pants are dirty. You never want to see that.
And Jeff, we've talked about it a little bit. Bill Callahan's one of the reasons that this offense is so good. His job with the offensive line has made that unit, as good as it is.
It's funny, Dave. When they went to hire Bill Callahan, you heard, boy, this guy is such a great offensive line coach, one of the best ever, and blah, 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 blah. Well, he's taken this unit and turned it into one of the best in the NFL. And so it's kind of impressive to watch. Remember, he was head coach of the Raiders back in the day. And, thank goodness Wyatt Teller should be writing notes to Pro Football Focus, because before Pro Football Focus started saying how great Wyatt Teller is, nobody thought Wyatt Teller was much of anything at right guard. In fact, remember at the beginning of last season, everybody said that guy's the weak link in this offensive line. And 6 weeks in, Pro Football Focus, highest graded offensive lineman in the league is Wyatt Teller. And all of a sudden, Wyatt's in line for a big contract and going to get paid and doing a great job, which is wonderful because that means we get a chance to hear from him because he's wildly entertaining. So that works out very well. The key to this whole thing, you can't have a good running game. You can't have a quarterback perform well. You can't have wide receivers run their patterns and get open unless the quarterback has time, unless the running backs have holes, and that's up to the offensive line. So a big investment there. And with Jack Conklin and Jedrick Wills by Andrew Berry, outstanding. And bringing in Teller and Treader and Bitonio was here. So they've put together a really nice group up front.
Yeah, and one thing that's been impressive, they've been able to kind of plug and fill and mix and match. So, Jedrick Wills banged up, Chris Hubbard out, which means Blake Hance played left tackle for a while. And Wyatt Teller talked about Hance and the way he's played.
Northwestern guy, smart guy, right? But, he's a guy who works extremely hard. He's before practice working on his sets, both sides. He's a guy who, if we have a tackle go down, he goes in. So, he's an accountable guy, a resilient guy. He came in last year, Baker didn't even know his name, but he was blocking for him and, protecting him. So, he's a guy that I have a lot of trust in. And, a guy who can play well. He's just got to, trust the technique and fundamentals just like I do. And, success is right there. And I see it when he comes in and he plays extremely hard for the group next to him. It's amazing to have that camaraderie with someone who's coming off the bench.
And again, Jeff, I think that goes back to Bill Callahan. It doesn't matter who they've plugged in. It hasn't been a glaring, it hasn't been like, oh, we're missing the left tackle. Oh, we're missing Joel Bitonio when he was out.
Yeah. The one thing I think that is also good, and Callahan's the key to that, Dave, but Andrew Berry has identified guys that might mix and match a little bit. Blake Hance, though he's a backup and though he had to introduce himself to Baker in the huddle last year, he played left tackle at Northwestern. So this is a generalization, if you're good enough to play left tackle in the Big Ten for almost your entire career, we played some guard his senior year too, but if you're able to play left tackle in the Big Ten, chances are you can play guard in the NFL. And if you have to, you can play tackle in the NFL. He's a big guy, he's 6'6", 305. So they identified a guy, found a guy, Callahan, I can coach him up, done. Chris Hubbard, I know people have given Chris a lot of grief, at various times when he was the starting right tackle here. But here's a guy who has started in the NFL at guard and tackle. Well, how valuable is he? That's an incredibly valuable piece to have that you can plug in anywhere. And we've seen him play right tackle, we've seen him play left tackle, we've seen him play guard. So I like the construction of that unit. You have guys with versatility, and Nick Harris can play center, he can play guard. So I like that versatility, and I think that's credit not only to Callahan but also to the staff that put it together, Andrew Berry and his group.
Yeah, and there seems to be the cohesion between identifying talent and then it fits with what you want to do, which was what was missing here for so long. All right, Browns average 174.7 rushing yards per game, second in the NFL behind only the Ravens. Does that surprise you?
No. What surprises me, although Lamar Jackson is there, is maybe that the Ravens are number one. After losing J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. So with those guys all out, the fact that the Ravens are still doing pretty well and good to them, it's Tyson Williams and Latavius Murray, but Lamar Jackson's the key guy there. I expect the Browns to be a top 5 rushing team in the NFL. And you can't say absolutely they're the best number one, because a lot of that depends on, what happens in a game. Can we hammer the run? Yes, we were able to do that against Chicago. Terrific. And it might not be that case against Minnesota. Maybe Kirk Cousins goes out and throws a couple of touchdown passes early, and the Browns have to catch up a little bit. But you can still, with this talented running game, Dave, even if you have to catch up, if you fall behind 14-21-0 in a game, and you're in the second quarter, you're not in the second half, you can still run the football and get back into a football game. In fact, that might even be more of a surprise element because teams are going to think you're throwing. So no, it doesn't surprise me that they're second. It wouldn't surprise me if they end up in the top 5. It would surprise me terribly if they're not a top 10 rushing team at the end of the year.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Baker Mayfield and Odell. Yeah, well, you got to keep you happy.
Fair enough.
I'm just handing you the ball.
Wouldn't that surprise you if
they're not top 10? Yeah. I was surprised they were second. I knew they ran the ball effectively, but
were you?
Yeah, they have so many weapons to throw the ball to that's the only reason why.
But remember, they have their top 2 wide receivers. Only one of them has been in there every game.
Yeah.
And one game they basically didn't have one of those guys. Either one. Odell was out and Jarvis got hurt second play.
So Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham Jr. looked like there was some chemistry there, and they were much more on the same page, at least to me. What did you think when you saw Odell and Baker in that game against the Bears?
First, remember on that opening drive, I think the first pass Baker threw to Odell, and I'm not a believer in the whole, Odell out there makes Baker worse, blah, blah. I don't buy that. If you can't connect with a terrific wide receiver, then I think that's on the quarterback. The quarterback has the ball. The wide receiver has to catch it if it's thrown his way. I thought maybe the first pass, it looked like they tried too hard on that one. And then they had a connection. And then I thought, Dave, through the rest of the game, it just looked natural flow of the game. Pass goes to Odell Beckham Jr. And that's what you want. So I thought it was terrific.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of going to progress, and you're going to be able to see him eventually getting behind defenses. And Baker throws the ball deep, terrific, and I think that's something that's setting up to be a big part of this offense at some point in time when needed.
I thought it was interesting after the game. Odell said he felt just gassed. He was out there for a lot of plays, which first came back from an ACL. I was surprised at that a little bit. That's a lot, having not played in a football game in almost a year. So he said he was gassed. My guess is he won't be gassed after the next game, and that's a good thing. And hopefully Jarvis is back, when he's allowed to be back, and sooner rather than later. And then they're together, because they're a very nice combination. I mean, you get both of those guys out there, and we haven't seen it that much, Dave. Get both of those guys out there with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And that's a lot of talent at two of the skill positions. So that could be phenomenal.
Jeff Phelps and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. On the other side of the break, we'll hear what Chris Sims thinks about Myles Garrett. And also, will the Browns defense continue to be aggressive, or was it because there was a rookie quarterback under center? Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Jeff Phelps. Chris Sims from NBC Sports Unbuttoned talks about Myles Garrett and the game he had against the Bears.
Insanity. I mean, of course, I picked the guy to win the NFL Defensive MVP the last 3 years. Now, in the year I didn't, I finally got off it. He's going to win it. But yeah, he's a freak of nature. And you saw the sacks too. There was a few that were the traditional, just beat a guy off the edge. There's a few that are just like, hey, it's a bootleg and he runs somebody down. I mean, he can do everything.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one of those humans where you see him in person, you go, oh my gosh, that's Myles Garrett? Mm-hmm. No wonder he was the first pick. Like, he just jumps out to you that way. So yeah, unbelievable performance by the Cleveland defense. Hey, Chicago defense played good too.
Yeah.
It's just, when you're on the field every fourth play the whole game, it's hard to, you're gonna break at some point. But like, as much as Myles Garrett was a beast and awesome, the story of the day is, what the was Chicago doing on the offensive side of the ball?
What
I'm
were
sorry. Running the same offense they always run, which I just was shocked by. And so was Myles Garrett. I mean, I saw a quote after the game, right? He said something where he was like, I thought they were going to move. We were expecting them to move Justin Fields more.
Yeah, they weren't alone. I was expecting to move Justin Fields more too. They didn't, and Myles Garrett made sure he moved him.
Seemed as if they were running the Andy Dalton offense.
Yeah.
Didn't it?
Yeah.
That was not a good idea.
No, I don't know how you could sit in a room and watch what Justin Fields does and say, hey, let's have him play from the pocket. That's what they did. I
know. I saw a story, Dave, that said Bears fans are apologizing to Mitchell Trubisky after watching what Matt Nagy did to Justin Fields. And I kind of feel the same way, because Mitch got a really raw deal in Chicago, I thought. And Nagy didn't get the blame. Mitch did. And now I think people are thinking, maybe we didn't need to go get Justin Fields. Maybe we just needed a new head coach and a new offensive scheme.
Yeah.
And Trubisky would have been just fine. I thought their game plan on offense wasn't the best. How's that?
Yeah, that's being very kind, and I would agree. That you can't fit square pegs into round holes, and we have seen that repeatedly before Kevin Stefanski with the Browns offense, and I kind of felt like we were watching that on the other side, and it was fun to watch somebody else try to do that against our defense. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, that's true.
Did it seem like the Browns defense was more aggressive to you? And
yes.
Is that just a function of rookie quarterback, or do you think that's the way they want to play?
There's the question, right? That's the thing that we talked about on my show on 92.3, Dave, the last 2 days. It's like, okay, Browns defense looked really good. Let's give them credit for that, and let's think that that's what Joe Woods is looking for. You're not going to get 9 sacks. The last time they had it was, 6 years ago, 2015. You're not going to get that on any kind of a regular basis. But they got after the quarterback. They really put pressure on Fields. They put pressure on the entire offense of the Chicago Bears. And I wonder, okay, before anybody says the Bears were awful, you must give Joe Woods and the defense some credit. It would be unfair not to. But I wonder the same thing. How much was Chicago? How much was Cleveland? But I do think, Dave, that is how they want to play on defense. And that's, I've heard them say that, but until you see it, you never know for sure. But I do think they want to have that kind of a defense. If you have Myles Garrett, and then you have Jadeveon Clowney, who had a gentleman on our show today, Randy Mueller, who's a former NFL front office exec. He said, I think his best pass rushing days are behind him, but he's still a really good football player, and he can do the job at defensive end, especially against the run. And then you go draft Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. You're starting Malik McDowell after he hasn't played in 5 years because you love his aggressiveness. It would seem to me you want to be a defense that's aggressive and tries to make big plays and gets to the quarterback. So my guess is, yeah, that's exactly the kind of defense they want to be. And we saw our first real glimpse of it against the Bears.
You know, the one thing I would say, the first couple of weeks, it was almost like they were afraid they were going to get beat by a big play. I don't think they have to, you don't have to worry about that with the offense you have. This offense can make up for big plays that you give up. You know, you only do that if you're afraid that you can't go and answer. And I think this offense can answer anything that the defense gives up in terms of big plays.
Can I say two dirty words in Cleveland?
Sure.
And for some reason, these are dirty words in Cleveland, and I don't quite understand why. Greg Williams.
Yeah.
Greg Williams would be a great, his style of defense would be great with this offense because Greg did exactly what you just described. Let's go get him. If we make a mistake, the heck with it. Our offense is going to put up 6, but we're going to go get him and make that football come to our side. We're going to get turnovers and we're going to make big plays. And I would love to see this defense turn into something like that. Now, Greg Williams had a lot of success in this league playing that kind of football. Now, he probably didn't have the personnel to do exactly what he wanted. And God knows he probably didn't have the complete offensive package to support that kind of a defense, exactly what you just laid out. But I would love to see Joe Woods play that aggressive style of defense. And you're right, Dave. That offense is a complete safety net for playing that style of defense.
Yeah. The only thing I'd say is don't play the safety in the Muni lot, and we should be good with the aggressive style.
Little Jabril Peppers reference there. I get that. And Dave, especially if you get up 10 points or more, man, get after him, right?
Absolutely.
Get after him.
What's the recipe for a win for the Browns against the Vikings? What do they need to do to come back from Minnesota 3-1?
Oddly enough, I think it's slow down Kirk Cousins. He's played pretty well so far. And I don't know if many people thought that Seattle would go there and get whacked, but they did. And Kirk Cousins looked pretty good doing it. They have good skill position players. You know, Darwin Cook was out last game. Alexander Madison had 122 yards rushing. You have Adam Thielen, who's got a touchdown in every game. And Justin Jefferson, their young wide receiver, is really he's a really good young wide receiver and looks like one of the best in the league coming up, you know, when he really gets his stride. He was good last year as a rookie, and I'm sure he'll do nothing but continue to improve. So they have weapons there. And you've got to get after Kirk Cousins. He has shown, Dave, that he is not the greatest of quarterbacks when he has a lot of pressure in his face. So get after him.
Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan, as well as the halftime and post-game shows on the Browns Radio Network. Jeff, as always, man, appreciate the time and thank you and the insight. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate you guys having me.
All right, Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan, as well as the Browns halftime and post-game shows on the Browns Radio Network. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue to talk Browns football. Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com will be joining us. Stay with us. Sports4CLE will be right back.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine and too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery, partners in education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns football. So Mike Greenberg from ESPN's Get Up, his pick, now that the Chiefs have started out 1-2, his pick to be the best in the AFC.
I picked Cleveland before the season started. I've seen no reason to change my mind now. They were 2 ridiculous plays away from beating Kansas City week 1. Think about the conversation we'd be having at this moment if the Chiefs were 0-3.
Right? I mean, that's amazing to me. They gave that game away, so the Chiefs have to get things figured out. It's not nothing.
Okay, so you bet your palatial estate? Is that what we're doing?
I'm not
Everybody,
betting.
it's real fun when you get on here. You can say whatever name you want. But I want to see come playoff time, which one of y'all has the gumption. I'll take the Browns.
All right, let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. So what do you think, Tim? Browns AFC or Chiefs are still in the conversation there?
I still think it's, we're still kind of too early to really decide how this is going to go. Although the Chiefs being 1-2 to start the season is very interesting because we know how good they are at Arrowhead. Say they don't win the AFC West. Say it's the Chargers who take it. Then all of a sudden, Kansas City's path to go back to a 3rd Super Bowl is a lot more difficult because now you have to go on the road for at least a couple games to get back to the Super Bowl. We know how big their advantage at Arrowhead is. Without it, this could be a very different story in the AFC. As for who can win it, certainly, the Browns certainly have the ability to do it. I think we got a glimpse of what the defense can be on Sunday. We know Baker's obviously taking a step forward. Touchdown passes, I think, still got to come a little bit, but all the pieces are there. Buffalo looks outstanding after that week 1 blip against Pittsburgh. I mean, Josh Allen threw for 350-plus yards and 4 touchdowns on Sunday. So they are not going anywhere. Baltimore is 2-1. They pulled off 2 incredible wins in a row. They are a little worrying as far as their stock for the Super Bowl, just because if Lamar Jackson keeps getting double-digit carries a game, I wonder how he's going to hold up for 17 games. I don't know how sustainable that is. Obviously, it's great now. He's been tremendous. He single-handedly got them back into that Kansas City game back in week 2, that 4th and 19. To set up Justin Tucker's game-winning field goal. I don't think it's talked about as much. So Baltimore's not going anywhere. So this is going to be a very fun kind of 4-team race, for these last 14 weeks, and then when we get into the playoffs. But the Browns are no question in the mix.
Yeah, and we've said all along that the AFC was kind of going to be teams beating each other. It didn't take very long for everybody to start beating each other up in the AFC. It happened first 3 weeks of the season without question. So Odell Beckham Jr. back. Wyatt Teller talked just about how important it is to have OBJ back on that offensive side of the ball.
He's good. He's pretty good. There was a couple plays that he was, I saw him toe tap more times than I could, foot fire for. I mean, and he was catching a ball. He's impressive. You see a guy who, again, the outside world tells you, oh, he's an ego. Everybody in the league has an ego. You know what I mean? He's a great team player. He cares about his guys. He jokes around with me, and who am I? You know what I mean? He's a good guy. He's a fun guy, and I really do see him really bringing it.
And Tim, that's consistently what you hear from his teammates. His teammates love him, and they're thrilled that he's back on the field. I don't think I've ever heard one of his teammates say something negatively about OBJ. And it looks like he's fitting right back into that offensive scheme as that game went along. You can see how they're going to start using him.
Yeah, I mean, when he came back in Sunday and played, he looked like he had never been hurt to begin with. You know, he looked healthy, he looked fluid, his hands looked good. And the other thing that was interesting is, like, I know he only caught 5 of the 9 targets he got from Baker, but a couple of those incompletions were kind of contested balls where you throw it up and see if your uber athletic receiver can make a play on it, because we've seen just how incredible he can be. But the thing that stood out is it seemed like they played for a long time, and, you know, chemistry questions in 2020, 2019, at least for a game, seemed like they were overblown. Baker knew where to put the ball for Odell. Odell knew where it was going and knew how to make a play on it. Those are things that I think were question marks with Odell. It has to continue to happen week after week. But if this is the Odell the Browns are going to get for the rest of the season in the playoffs, this form, if he can even get better, that's nothing but good news, especially if Jarvis Landry comes back, especially as these young receivers like Donovan Peoples-Jones and Anthony Schwartz continue to mature, as long as the offensive line continues to get stronger. If Odell is healthy and he can play like he did on Sunday, there's no telling where this Browns offense can go, I think.
Yeah, it will be fun to watch without question. So one of the guys that was banged up, Greg Newsome, rookie cornerback, left the game, had an MRI on his calf. Results won't be known definitively until tomorrow, but he did tweet out earlier that he was I'll be good, dog pound. So would indicate, doesn't think it's anything terribly serious. When you look at how important Greg Newsome is, Tim, how important is it to have him against the Vikings?
Massive. I mean, Jeff was just talking about with you a few minutes ago, the skill players that the Vikings have. Adam Thielen, he's a number 1 receiver on so many teams, and Justin Jefferson could also be a number 1 receiver. He doesn't look like he's having a second season letdown. So you have 2 incredibly dynamic skill players, and you're going to need Newsome to really try and shadow one of those guys, maybe both of those guys at different times. Maybe you switch up Denzel Ward and Newsome on these matchups, depending on, you know, the situation of the game, depending on what you're looking for. Newsome hasn't necessarily been thrown to a lot. I think he commented a week or so ago that he was surprised that he hasn't been thrown at that many times as a rookie. I guess that was probably a good thing, I guess, because that's kind of what we saw in college, where quarterbacks just weren't throwing his way. I don't think that's going to be the case on Sunday. They're going to be throwing both sides. Kirk Cousins is going to spread the ball around. We've seen him do it the first 3 games of the season. So they're going to need Newsome, if he's healthy, to be able to go, in addition to the depth they have, because against this passing attack, you can't have too many guys who can cover.
No question about that. And again, Greedy Williams is a starting level quarterback, but I think there's a reason the Browns would prefer Greg Newsome, a little bit faster, a little bit more athletic. Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, Keyshawn Johnson from ESPN has his power rankings. We'll also check in with what we learned through 3 weeks from the Browns. Tim wrote that in The Plain Dealer. We'll get his thoughts. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik. So Keyshawn Johnson from ESPN's KJM gave us his power rankings.
Number 5, this is where it starts to get sticky, right? The Cleveland Browns. They lose Landry, no problem. We'll just roll in OBJ. We'll keep things going the way it's supposed to. Baker Mayfield will play the way he's supposed to against this particular defense in Chicago. Doesn't help, though, that we have a defensive line that could also go get 9 sacks when we need them to. Doesn't help the other team at all. The Cleveland Browns are for real. They're here to stay. I think they're going to give whoever, Kansas City, Oakland, or Las Vegas, New England, Buffalo, whoever comes in the AFC, they're going to give them a run for the money in that AFC Championship game. I think they'll be in the AFC Championship game playing against somebody.
And Tim Bielik, I can't argue with that. if you want to tell me Kansas City, Buffalo, the Ravens, we've talked about it, but that's a guy who knows his football, and he's saying he thinks the Browns have the pieces to be in the AFC Championship game.
Absolutely. We've seen what they've done in the first 3 games of the season, just a couple plays away from stealing that game against Kansas City. If any one of those plays, like, for example, the Nick Chubb fumble, the Jamie Gillen drop snap, the Baker Mayfield throwaway that ended up being an interception, if any one of those goes a different way, the Browns are probably in a position to be 3-0. Granted, they played especially well on Sunday with the defense. I think the fact that of where they are, combined with the fact that we see that this team still has so much room to grow, I think, especially on the defensive side of the football, tells you that they do have the ability to get to the Super Bowl. I mean, we haven't seen the best of Baker Mayfield yet. He's been better, but I think there's still room to grow. We've seen that at times, in particular on Sunday when he missed those throws to Demetric Felton and Harrison Bryant. That could have been big plays, possibly touchdowns, and he still played well. So I think there's room to grow there. The defense, we saw they get 9 sacks, obviously, against Justin Fields. That's not going to happen every week, but I think you're going to see that pass rush be dominant over time at times. They'll start to get some takeaways. I imagine, as the season goes on, maybe they ramp up the blitz a little more as we start to see that 3 safety package come out. We see more Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, how impressive he was against Chicago. All those factors come into the fact that the Browns are a really good team, but there's still upside, which is going to be a fascinating thing to watch over these final 14 games.
So you wrote what we learned about the Browns after 3 games. Take us through that and what you have found that's been impressive.
Well, this is something I wrote Monday morning for our Football Insider subscribers in the newsletter. I looked at just 3 things that I thought of what we've learned about the Browns this year. Number 1, obviously, I thought Baker's been better. He's definitely improved, even if the stats don't show. And what I mean by that, he's got a great completion percentage. I think it's 5th in the NFL, just a 10th of a point behind Kirk Cousins, ironically enough, who he'll go up against on Sunday. He's only got 2 touchdowns, but that's because they've been running the ball so well in the red zone that they haven't needed him to throw the ball into the end zone from inside the 20. I imagine that'll change a little more as teams try and stop that run. Baker ought to throw more in the red zone. We know how good of a red zone quarterback he is, so there's so much room to grow. But it's clear he's taken a step. He's in command of this offense, and over time the number is going to show. So that's number 1. Number 2, I wrote about just how good this rookie class is played. I mean, we've seen flashes from so many guys in this rookie class. We saw Anthony Schwartz have that big game in week 1. We saw Demetric Felton take over in week 2 when he had that 33-yard catch and run for a touchdown. Week 3, it was Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah's time to shine. He was outstanding, playing downhill. We talked about Greg Newsome, how solid he's been. It seems like every week, a different part of that rookie class has really stepped up and had their moments. And this is only 3 games into their career, so there's no telling how good they could be. They're not all going to be all pros. I mean, let's get that out of the way right now. They're not all going to be amazing, but they're all looking like they have the potential to be quality contributors on this football team. And I think when you're a contender, that's what you're looking for, is guys who can contribute, guys who can eventually be key pieces down the road, but for now, guys who can be involved and have an impact. So that's number 2. And then the third thing, which plays in particular to what's coming up in the next few weeks, they need a healthy Jedrick Wills. I mean, I give him a lot of credit for gutting it out the last 2 weeks, playing on the ankle injury, but it's clear he hasn't been moving well. And they're going to, as much as you need him in the next few weeks, Danielle Hunter of the Vikings this week, Joey Bosa and the Chargers next week. You got Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt and the Cardinals after that. Then you got the Broncos after that. You got the Steelers after that. It's an endless onslaught of pass rushers the Browns are going to go up against. Now, I understand, you may need Wills for those games, but I don't know if you want to have him out there necessarily trying to gut it out, if that means it's going to re-aggravate his injury or it's going to be a problem in late October and November, even December. So maybe it's not a bad idea to sit him for a game, maybe 2, to make sure that he's right, because the old saying goes, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And if you have to sacrifice, some left tackle play, if you have to have Blake Hance or Chris Hubbard, if he's healthy out there, to make sure your left tackle is right for the games that matter the most at the end of the season in December and January in the playoffs, then that's something I think they have to weigh. But It wouldn't be a bad idea if you wanted to sit Wills for a week just to make sure the ankle's right. That it's a decision that may hurt the team in the game a little bit, but sometimes a short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain is what benefits you down the road.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Tim, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
You got it. Thanks for having me, guys. Enjoy the rest of the day.
All right, Tim Bielik. Make sure you read him in the pages of the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. That'll do it for this edition of Sports4CLE. We will see you again tomorrow at 4. Scheduled guest, Scott Patrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. That is coming up tomorrow at 4 o'clock. We'll see you then. Have a great night, everybody.